People often ask me, how long will it take to close the purchase or sale of a small business? So I thought I'd put together this short video to explain that timeline. The timeline for purchasing and selling a small business typically has 5 phases: the letter of intent phase, the due diligence phase, the purchase agreement phase, the closing phase, and the post-closing phase. And I'd like to explain what goes on in each of those phases and also give you a range of the typical amount of time it takes to proceed through each one of those phases. So in the letter of intent phase, what we're doing here is we're drafting a letter that contains the key terms of the transaction. It acts as a roadmap for the deal. Depending on the amount of negotiation that goes on about those key terms, it can typically take anywhere from 2 days to 2 weeks to draft a letter of intent. Once the letter of intent has been drafted, we move to the due diligence phase. The due diligence phase is the phase where the buyer investigates and inspects the seller's business. The buyer will want to look at the financial information, may want to do a site visit, may also do environmental inspections depending on the type of business that's being sold. And if the buyer needs to get a loan for the purchase price, this is the time when the buyer will start the loan application with its lender. The due diligence phase typically takes anywhere from between 30 and 90 days. Once the buyer has completed the due diligence phase and wants to continue with the transaction, we move to the purchase agreement phase. During the purchase agreement phase, the attorneys and the buyer and seller will negotiate, draft, and review the purchase agreement and other closing documents. A lot of time during this phase will be spent on some of the key terms of the asset purchase agreement, including the payment terms, the allocation of the purchase price, the representations and warranties, and the indemnification provisions. In addition, during the purchase agreement phase, the seller will need to spend some time collecting the information for and drafting the disclosure schedules. The buyer is also working with its lender to finalize its loan. The purchase agreement phase can typically take anywhere from 3 weeks to 3 months. Some of the factors that may make the purchase agreement phase longer include the number of revisions to the asset purchase agreement and other closing documents, and the need for the seller to get permission to transfer contracts. Once the purchase agreement has been finalized and all the closing documents have been drafted, we move to the closing. At the closing, the parties will sign and exchange the closing documents. The buyer will sign and deliver all of its loan documents, and the loan will be funded, and the purchase price will be dispersed to pay off the seller's debts and to pay the seller if any balance remains. A closing typically takes 1 to 2 days. Nowadays, closings are typically conducted remotely, so the parties don't all need to meet and sign at the same time, and many times can be done virtually through electronic signatures. During the post-closing phase, titles will be recorded, like vehicle titles and property titles. Domain names and social media accounts will be transferred. The transfer of trademarks will be recorded. The seller's business name may be changed, and if the seller has agreed to provide post-closing transition services, this is the time when the seller and the buyer will visit the business's customers, vendors, and suppliers, and where the seller will train the buyer about the operations of the business. The post-closing phase could take anywhere from 2 to 30 days. When you consider each of the 5 phases in the transaction timeline and the range of typical times it takes to pass through each phase, and you add those times up, you can see that it may take anywhere from 2 to 6 months from the beginning of the letter of intent phase until the end of the closing phase. I'm Joel Ankney. I'm a Virginia attorney who helps people start, run, buy, and sell small businesses, and I'm the author of the book, Here's the Deal: Everything You Wish a Lawyer Would Tell You About Buying a Small Business. If you'd like to contact me or learn more about the transaction process, about the process of buying or selling a small business, please visit my website at ankneylaw.com.